Rain hammers the roof. The judge looks at the man standing in front of her. She knows that face but can't place it. And he's watching her like he already expects the worst. Papers shuffle, the room waits, and one call from her will change everything. Before we continue, please tell us in the comments, where are you watching from today? And don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. It was still dark when Marcus Holt woke up. The radiator clicked every few minutes, trying to push heat through but mostly failing. His breath hung in the cold air. The clock read 4:47 a.m. His kids were asleep on the floor under a small avalanche of library books and old blankets. He pulled off his jacket and laid it over them. Emma moved a little, her braid falling across his arm. Caleb's plastic spaceman sat jammed between the couch cushions. Marcus stayed still. If they woke up early, there'd be no chance of getting them back to sleep. "Is it time for school?" Emma mumbled. "Not yet, baby. Go back to sleep." He stood, stretched the kink from his back, and checked the kitchen. $4.23 in change, 1 heel of bread, 3 eggs, half a jar of peanut butter. He made French toast for them, then lied and said he had already eaten. While they ate, he drank water and pretended it filled him up. Emma kept sneaking looks at him because she knew he hadn't eaten. She didn't say anything about it. That was the kind of quiet loyalty kids learned when the rules didn't make sense. The cold hit them hard on the walk to school. 6 long blocks uphill. Marcus kept a hand on Caleb's shoulder because the boy's coat rode up at the wrists. At the gate, their teacher smiled politely and gave Marcus that look adults give poor parents when they want to be helpful but don't know how. "Morning, Mr. Holt." Emma lingered before going inside. "You'll be here when we get home?" she asked. "Always," he said. Across town, Judge Caroline Pierce was starting her morning in silence. Marble counters, stainless steel, a muted TV flashing headlines she didn't care to read. She sat at her kitchen island with a stack of files, marking notes with a black fountain pen. She paused on one folder, Holt, Marcus E., and read it slower than the rest. Emergency custody review. She let out a tight breath. In her drawer sat a wedding photo turned face down. She kept it that way. The coffee on the counter went cold. That afternoon, Marcus found Detective Chen waiting near his apartment door. The man's tone was calm, but the words weren't. The custody hearing had been moved up. 72 hours. New allegations. Unstable housing, kids underfed. The oldest forced to parent the younger. Marcus read the pages twice before his hands started to shake. "I'll be honest," Chen said, closing his notebook. "On paper, it doesn't look good. The grandparents have everything ready." Marcus swallowed. "They're my kids." "Judge Pierce is fair," Chen said. "Careful, but fair. You'll need proof of income and a child care plan." When Chen left, the apartment went quiet, like even the air felt sorry for him. Marcus sat on the couch and stared at the floor. He gave himself 30 seconds to panic. Then he made himself move. His shift selling solar panels started in an hour. He changed shirts, grabbed his bag, and headed out. The macro loop opened there without him knowing it. One small act of endurance that would tie his life to a stranger's. By 9:40 that night, he was driving home through freezing rain. 8 hours of slammed doors behind him, 0 sales to show. His last peanut butter sandwich sat next to him, still wrapped. Then he saw it hazard lights flashing up ahead, water spraying off speeding trucks. A car was pulled over, a single figure standing outside it. He slowed down, fought the voice in his head that said, "Keep going," and pulled onto the shoulder. A woman was there, heels in one hand, phone in the other. "The brakes went out, I think," she said. "Then the car just died." Marcus popped the hood. The rain smelled like metal and cold exhaust. After a few minutes, he shook his head. "It's not starting. I'll call a tow." His phone found one shaky bar of service. "They'll be about 45 minutes. He looked back at her, shivering hard. "You can wait in my truck. The heater's lousy, but better than out here." She hesitated only a second. If you're sure. Yeah, he said. You're colder than I am. In the cab, the wipers squeaked a nervous rhythm. When she said she hadn't eaten since lunch, he glanced at the sandwich. He already knew what he'd do. It's nothing special, he said. Just peanut butter. He offered it to her. She refused, then gave in. Split it, she said, and handed half back. They ate quietly for a while, rain pounding the roof above them. What do you do? She asked. I sell solar panels during the day and fix motors on weekends. 2 kids. My girl wants to be a marine biologist. She's seen the ocean? Not yet, he said. But one day. She smiled, tired but genuine. The tow truck lights appeared in the rain. She pulled herself together. I never got your name. Marcus. Thank you, Marcus. You didn't have to stop. He looked at her. Yeah, I did. His taillights faded into the storm when he left. She reached into the jacket he'd given her and found a crumpled library receipt. Marine Biology for Kids. Charlotte's Web. Evicted. She folded it like a secret and held it in her lap. At 11:30, Marcus parked outside his building. Emma was still awake, pretending to read. Dad, are we going to be okay? She whispered. I'm trying, he said. That's not what I asked. He didn't answer her. Back in the tow truck, Caroline Pierce looked at her own reflection in the window and felt something tear open inside her chest. Morning came cold and hard. 71 hours left. Marcus started collecting pay stubs, calling landlords, begging coworkers for written statements. Every small win turned useless as soon as someone mentioned fees or missing paperwork. Miss Rodriguez, the teacher, caught him after school. I'm sorry, Mr. Holt. I have to tell the truth in court. Emma's missed several days. She fell asleep in class once. He nodded. I know. Across town, the Whitmores practiced their testimony. Diane said, we have to make the judge understand. Emma will have her own room. Caleb too. Robert kept quiet, fingering the edge of his glass of water. What if we're overstepping? He asked. Our daughter worked herself to death trying to survive, Diane said. I won't see her kids live the same way. He didn't argue, but something in his face shifted. That night, Pierce sat alone in her office with an open bottle of wine and a mountain of files. One of them was the Rodriguez case, the one that never stopped haunting her. She closed it and picked up the Holt file. Food insecurity, unstable housing, she read aloud. Her eyes drifted toward the coat rack where Marcus's jacket still hung. She told herself it was irrelevant, yet she couldn't bring herself to move it. Thursday morning, the courtroom filled. Marcus wore his only suit, a size too big. The Whitmores looked crisp and certain. Chen sat quietly near the witness bench. All rise for the Honorable Judge Caroline Pierce. When she walked in, time froze. Their eyes met. Recognition hit both of them hard before she forced professionalism back onto her face. The lawyer began the petition. Words like failure to provide and emergency circumstances echoed. Detective Chen went through his notes. Unpaid bills, missed rent, half-empty fridge. Diane's attorney pressed hard. You leave your children alone at night? No. My neighbor checks on them. She's 73 and not licensed, right? She loves them. Love doesn't pay the bills, Mr. Holt. Pierce's hand trembled slightly as she wrote. She said nothing. The system wasn't built for feelings. Marcus looked at her, confused, waiting for her to acknowledge him, to say anything. And she didn't. The same woman who had shared his sandwich sat at the bench pretending not to know him. Recess, she said finally. The gavel cracked the air. She shut her chamber door behind her and pulled the folded receipt from her pocket. She read the titles again and whispered, What am I doing? Out in the hallway, Chen stepped beside Marcus. Did you know the judge before today? I met someone 2 nights ago on the highway, Marcus said. Didn't know it was her. Does she know you know? Yeah. This could be grounds for a mistrial. Don't, Marcus said quietly. She saw me when nobody else did. Let her finish. Chen watched him go, unsure which rule he still believed in. A few minutes later, the gavel struck again, calling everyone back. The sound carried through the hall like a warning. The air felt tight, ready to break. No one knew whose life would change next. The room went quiet as the bailiff's words faded. Everyone rose when Judge Pierce stepped back in. Marcus stayed standing even after she told him to sit, as if his body didn't trust the chair. The Whitmore's lawyer straightened his jacket and started fresh, the clipped rhythm of his voice slicing through the air. He laid out numbers, bank statements, photographs of the Whitmore's spare bedroom glowing with pastel paint and new toys. Each photo landed like another ounce on Marcus's shoulders. Pierce kept her tone even. "Continue." The lawyer talked about responsibility, stability, safety. Marcus listened, but didn't really hear. His kids' faces filled his head, Emma's smile missing the front tooth, Caleb's habit of humming when nervous. When his turn came, he stood. The suit hung off his frame. "I know what things look like on paper," he said. "But everything I've ever done is for them." He looked at Diane. "I'm not their enemy. I just don't have money." The lawyer cut in. "With respect, this court doesn't rule on sentiment. We rule on facts." Pierce's voice sharpened. "Facts are still interpreted by people, counselor." The room shifted, as if everyone had forgotten the judge could still bite. She rubbed the bridge of her nose. "Mr. Holt, do you have any further witnesses?" "Just Mrs. Okafor," he said softly. "But she's not here. She can't drive." The lawyer pressed one last question. "Do you think love is enough to raise a family?" Marcus looked at him. "It has to be. It's the only thing poor people can afford." A hush spread. For a heartbeat, Caroline felt herself nod inwardly. Then training took over. "We'll continue after lunch," she said, and stepped down. She moved fast through the hallway toward her chambers. The robe felt heavier by the step. Once alone, she tore off the glasses and pressed her forehead to the cool surface of her desk. Her stomach pitched. That file from years ago, the one she'd signed near midnight without reading the last healthcare note, flashed in her mind. The woman in that case had died during an emergency labor. Her husband hadn't made it to the hospital in time because Child Services had detained him under the order she signed. The name on that file had been Holt. Different first name, same county. She opened her cabinet and found the old archives on her secure drive. There it was, Vanessa Holt, Marcus's wife. She scrolled through the digital pages, hand shaking. The signature at the bottom was hers. The world tilted. She whispered, "Oh God, it was me." No one heard. Outside, people laughed in the hallway. The sound grated against her chest. She sat back, eyes on the ceiling, throat tight. Every case she'd ruled on since then came flooding back, each number a ghost. The camera moved with her thoughts, pulling to memory the night she'd signed it. A tired clerk had dropped the file, told her it was routine, just a temporary hold until hospital clearance. She hadn't double-checked. She'd been late for her daughter's recital. Her daughter, the one she hadn't spoken to in 3 years. The weight of it sent her pacing. The macro loop started tightening. After lunch, the atmosphere shifted. Her eyes were pink but stern again. Diane was called next. She spoke with sincerity that almost convinced him. "He's a good man," she said, "but good intentions can't fill a fridge or fix a heater." Marcus interrupted before he should have. "Vanessa died because she fell asleep driving home from work. She wasn't reckless. She was exhausted." His voice cracked. "Mr. Holt," the lawyer shouted. "Enough," Pierce ordered, but her tone broke too. "One more interruption and I'll hold you in contempt." The silence that followed was thick and ugly. Everyone looked away from him now, even Chen. Marcus sat down slowly, head in his hands. When proceedings paused for the day, Chen approached Pierce outside the courtroom. "Judge, can we talk privately?" She nodded once, careful to keep distance. Inside the small side office, he spoke low. "Ma'am, I looked into your roadside breakdown. The mechanics say that wasn't random. Someone drained your brake line. Pierce blinked. What? It looks like sabotage. Purpose was to strand you, not hurt you. New fluid pattern, no crack in the reservoir. Who would do that? I'm working on it. But if it connects to anyone in this case, he trailed off. The implication sat there unseen but heavy. Pierce felt nausea rise again. Marcus, the man she'd nearly destroyed once, had saved her life 2 nights ago because someone else had decided to use her as bait. That night, back in their quiet mansion, Robert and Diane ate dinner in near silence. She was making lists of schools and therapists. He wasn't eating. Finally, she set her fork down. Say what you're thinking. You wouldn't want to hear it. Try me. I hired someone. His voice cracked the surface like a stone through ice. To make her car stop. Nothing dangerous, just a scare. I needed her to see reality the way we see it. If she'd been late that night, the case might have gone to another judge, someone sympathetic to us. Diane stared. You did what? It wasn't supposed to matter, he whispered. It wasn't supposed to cross with him. She shoved her chair back. You could have killed her, but I didn't. And look at how close we are now. It worked. She saw him at his worst. It worked? Diane's voice lifted to a tremor. You turned this into a scheme, into politics. I thought we were saving them. We are, he shouted. But she was already walking out of the dining room. Back in his apartment, Marcus studied eviction papers on his table. Mrs. Okafor knocked, holding a tray of rice and beans. She was small and calm, eyes soft behind thick glasses. Eat. I can't. He started. You must. She sat down. You're their world. Even tired, you shine for them. He laughed without humor. The world doesn't care if I shine. They just keep turning off the lights. She reached out her hand. You keep them warm. That's all that matters. Her kindness hit like a punch. When she left, he sat in the dark and cried quietly. It was the first time in months. Next morning, Chen's phone buzzed. The garage footage from that night had come through. A figure in a cap walked up to the Lexus, crouched, then disappeared into the shadows. The side of a van, partly visible under light glare, bore the faded logo of a private security company. He called the number listed in their directory. The receptionist recognized the job. Cash payment, she said. No official invoice. Someone wanted privacy. He pushed further, traced the subcontractor one Dale Kramer. By lunch, Kramer was sitting in a small interview room, sweating through his shirt. I didn't mean harm, the man said, voice too quick. Just drained a line to leave her stranded. I was told it was a domestic problem. Who told you? I got hired through another guy, Ron Sanderson. He usually works. Custody stuff, high-end family cases. Chen stared at the notes in disbelief. Sanderson, the go-to investigator for the Whitmore's attorney. By the time court reconvened, Pierce knew none of this yet. She took her seat. The last witness was called Emma, 9 years old. Small hands gripping the sides of the chair. Child testimony happened in chambers to spare her the crowd. Chen stood quietly in the back while the child advocate watched. Pierce softened her tone. Emma, you just need to tell me the truth, okay? Yes, ma'am. Do you feel safe with your dad? Emma nodded. Yes. Are you ever hungry at home? The girl hesitated. Everyone felt that pause. Her eyes flicked to Marcus. Sometimes, she said softly, but Dad's always hungry first. He makes sure we eat. Pierce's throat tightened. What do you want, Emma? Tears welled. I want my mom back. And if I can't have that, I want my dad. Please don't take my dad. Pierce excused her, eyes bright and unfocused. As soon as the door closed, Chen stepped forward. Your Honor, I need to speak with you. It's urgent. They moved to chambers. He laid the photos and receipts on her desk like a deck of evidence cards. I found who tampered with your car. The payments came through an LLC, owned by Robert Whitmore. Pierce's fingers slid away from the files. He tried to kill me? No. It was a setup. They wanted you stranded that night, so you'd meet Marcus Holt by chance, to see him desperate. It was meant to confirm bias, not hurt anyone. Backfired when he turned out to save you. Pierce stared at her reflection in the glass of the framed oath on her wall. All this time I thought systems created fairness. Maybe they just give cruelty better paperwork. What are you going to do? Chen asked. Finish what started. That phrase opened a new loop. It meant exposure, risk, the end of her career, maybe redemption. 5 minutes later, Robert Whitmore was escorted into her chambers. She told him in that same calm courtroom voice, "You have 30 seconds to explain before I refer this to the district attorney." He sat down slowly. I was scared. I thought you'd side with him because of emotion, not evidence. You sabotaged a car to influence a judge. I needed proof one way or the other. I thought if you saw him the right way, when you drain brake fluid on a road in the rain, people die, she said. Her calm was terrifying. You almost turned this court into a crime scene. He broke down completely. I'm not a monster. I was him once. A decade ago, I was drowning, drunk every night. My wife saved me. I thought doing the same for those kids would make up for everything. For a moment, she almost pitied him. Almost. Then she handed Chen the written order, placing Robert under arrest for tampering and conspiracy. When the news reached Diane, she appeared in the courthouse hallway, pale and shaking. She demanded to see Marcus. They collided near the exit. I do love them, she said. I know you do, Marcus answered. But love that tries to erase me from their lives isn't the kind they need. She didn't reply. Back inside, Pierce sat alone again at her bench while maintenance workers closed curtains for the day. She opened her old digital file one last time and scrolled until she saw her signature under Vanessa Holt's death report. The words she had once written now glowed on the screen. She whispered to herself, I cost him the person he still talks to at night. The door creaked. Marcus stepped halfway in. Guards hovered behind him, letting him speak for 1 minute. She told me, he said quietly. Pierce looked up. About Robert? No, about you. My neighbor recognized your name. You were the one who signed the order when my wife died. Her throat closed. Yes. I didn't know till this morning. Guess the universe really likes to keep things cruel. He took one shaky breath. You can't fix what you broke. I know. But that night on the road, he said, you ate half my sandwich. I hope it tasted like mercy. He left before she could answer. Her hands stayed frozen above the keyboard. Outside, Det Chen stood by the elevators, watching them both in passing. He said nothing to either side. The system had eaten them alive and somehow forced truth out of its own teeth. The sound of the gavel still echoed when Marcus realized his body hadn't moved. Everyone else was standing. Diane was crying. Robert's face was unreadable. Emma and Caleb looked small at the end of the bench, the child advocate's hands resting on their shoulders. He didn't hear the next lines of legal language. He only saw Pierce's mouth form the words, custody granted to petitioners. Then the clerk said, this court is adjourned. And the sound that followed was Emma's voice breaking the quiet. Dad? He wanted to run to her, but a guard stepped forward. It was procedural, polite, terrible. Emma turned toward the exit in tears. Caleb too stunned to cry. Diane opened her arms, and the children didn't move right away. When they finally did, each step ripped through Marcus like a nerve being pulled from his body. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited. Chen cut them off with a motion of his hand. But microphones still turned like metal weeds following sunlight. Mr. Holt, any comment on the ruling? Marcus kept walking. By the time he reached the street, snow had started to fall. It was the soft, quiet kind, the kind that muffles city noise. None of it felt real. The last thing he saw through the cab window was Pierce exiting through the side door, surrounded by clerks. Her eyes caught his for maybe a second. Then she looked away. Days blurred together after that. A week felt like a year. He stopped going to work. He stopped checking mail. The apartment emptied fast. Bills, notices, eviction warnings slipped under the door. The silence without his kids felt like vacuum pressure. Once, he found Caleb's plastic spaceman on the couch cushion and couldn't remember how long he'd been sitting there holding it. Mrs. Okafor knocked one afternoon, carrying soup. She looked around the room that had gone dim with shut blinds. "You have to eat, Marcus. Have you called to see them?" "They said 2 months before I can even ask." "You can write letters?" He nodded, not looking up. That same evening, Pierce sat in her home office reading the transcript. She couldn't focus on the lines. Her phone buzzed with messages from court officials about the sabotage case headlines now leaking to local news. Judge targeted in custody plot. Each sentence tightened the nausea in her chest. She had enforced judgment pretending impartiality while carrying the very guilt being used to manipulate her. Her assistant called. "The board wants a statement on the leak." "I need time," she said, and hung up. At the Whitmores, the children tried to adjust. The house smelled of new paint and lemon polish. Each room looked perfect and wrong at the same time. Diane hovered always within 2 steps, asking if they needed a snack, if they'd brushed their teeth. So warm, so smothering. Emma answered every question politely. Caleb played with brand new toys he didn't recognize and asked every night when they'd go home. Each time, Diane smiled through fresh guilt. "This is home now, honey." Robert avoided the playroom. He spent most of his time on the patio staring at nothing. When Emma asked him once if her dad could come over for a visit, he said, "Not yet. Things have to calm down first." His voice cracked on the last word. Chen watched everything unravel from the sidelines. The DA's office was building a case against Robert. But bureaucracies move slow. He pushed papers, made calls, hit walls. Late one night, he sat in his car outside Marcus's building, engine off, staring up at the dark window. He still had Marcus's number on paper from the original file. He wanted to text, "You were right about the system," but he didn't. A few days later, he knocked anyway. Marcus opened the door, half asleep. "You shouldn't be here," Marcus said. "Probably not. You haven't eaten, have you?" He set a takeout bag on the table. Marcus looked at it like it might be a trap, then said, "They're gone for good, right?" Chen hesitated. "Legally, yeah. But the Whitmore case is about to blow open. I just need to connect a few pieces before charges." "What good will that do?" "I still lost them. If we prove the ruling was coerced, you might get another hearing." "You believe that?" Chen shrugged. "I have to." Pierce sat in her living room reading an email from the ethics board. They wanted an internal review. The official tone made her fingers numb. She set the laptop aside and looked at the cleanly folded jacket she still hadn't returned. Every night since the verdict, she'd folded and unfolded it like an anxious ritual. She thought about resigning, then wrote 2 sentences of an apology statement and deleted them. That same night, 10:32 p.m., Chen sent her a message. Garage footage confirmed. Robert Whitmore responsible. Need warrant signatures. She read it twice, locked her phone screen, and whispered, "Too late." But she couldn't sleep. Near midnight, she got in her car and drove through the industrial side of town where the snowbanks turned black from exhaust. She didn't know exactly where she was going until she saw Marcus sitting outside the closed garage he used to work at, a cigarette burning between his fingers. She rolled down the window. "You shouldn't be here," he said, echoing her first words. "I saw your lights. I needed to talk." "What do you want?" She leaned on the steering wheel. "I made the wrong call." He looked at her, empty-eyed. "Which one? Today or 8 years ago?" She blinked. "You know, my neighbor found the old paperwork. You signed the order that stopped me from seeing Vanessa before she died. I didn't hate you till now. I just thought it was bad luck." Caroline's voice barely carried. "There are no apologies that fix that." He laughed once, short and sharp. "Then why are you here?" "To tell you the investigation is opening. The truth about Robert will come out." "You think that's what I want?" "The truth? What do you want then?" My kids, he said. But the truth won't give them back. She almost said it might, then stopped. Instead, she reached into the seat beside her and handed him a manila envelope. It's copies of motions I'm filing. You'll get a call for an emergency hearing soon. He didn't touch it. Keep your papers. They're your chance. Chance ran out. He turned and walked away, leaving her engine idling under the streetlight. The next morning, Marcus forced himself to go to a community meeting about job placement. Broken chairs, coffee in styrofoam cups, people half listening. They talked about second chances. He stared at his calloused hands and thought of his daughter saying, "That's not what I asked." Back at the Whitmores, tension was spreading. Emma refused to eat one night, finally shouting, "You're not my dad," and ran upstairs. Diane followed halfway before stopping, leaning on the banister in tears. Robert came out of his office holding a white envelope. "I've been subpoenaed," he said quietly. "They know." Diane turned toward him, stunned. "What did you do?" "The brakes," he whispered. Silence filled the perfect hallway. Outside, the wind blew hard against the shutters, shaking the picture of Vanessa on the wall. At dawn, Chen stood beside his car outside that same house as officers went in. Robert surrendered without fight. Diane's tarot-streaked face pressed against the window as Emma clung to her, confused by the chaos. Chen rode in the back of the police van writing notes. The safest place for the children while the investigation finished would still be with Diane, under supervision, until the court decided what to do. He hated that he couldn't tell Marcus yet. Marcus found out 2 days later anyway, from the local paper. Seeing the headline felt like an electrical jolt. Grandfather arrested in judicial sabotage plot. For the first time in weeks, he stood up straight, not out of triumph, out of something else, proof that fate had finally blinked. He grabbed the phone and called Chen. "I want to file whatever paperwork I need. I'm getting them back." Chen exhaled. "Good. Because this time you have every reason to win." Marcus didn't sleep that night. The newspaper sat on the table beside his bed, still folded open on the story about Robert Whitmore's arrest. He kept reading the same paragraph until the words blurred. Every few minutes he thought of calling Diane to demand his children, but the truth was he didn't know how to talk to her without screaming. Morning came too bright. He shaved, put on the same wrinkled shirt he'd worn to court, and walked across town to the legal aid office. The secretary handed him a form and a take-a-number tab. He sat between two other parents waiting on custody appeals, both staring at the floor. His turn took 2 hours. The volunteer lawyer skimmed the articles Chen had given him and said, "There's chance, if the criminal case leads to a formal finding, that the original custody order was tainted. But that'll take months." Marcus rubbed his face. "Months means they grow up thinking I don't care." The lawyer sighed. "Write them letters anyway. The court keeps copies on file. It matters eventually." Outside, the sidewalk steamed from overnight snowmelt. He stood there holding the packet, feeling stupid for having hoped for something fast. He walked into the payphone alcove next to the bodega and dialed Diane anyway. The machine picked up. He left a message that started calm and ended shaking. "Tell them I love them. Tell them I'll see them soon. Please, don't make them forget my voice." Diane let the message play twice before deleting it. She couldn't handle hearing grief that sounded too much like her own. Upstairs, Emma listened through the vents. That was how she learned her dad was still fighting. Pierce spent that same day inside a meeting that felt like interrogation. 3 senior judges, 2 reporters listening for quotes, a mountain of paperwork. She admitted she'd met Marcus before the hearing. She didn't admit that she'd been the magistrate in his wife's case years earlier. One of the board members said quietly, "You've compromised this circuit. Resign before they drag you out." She stared at the table until the grain pattern doubled. "No, I'll fix what I broke. Caroline, there's no fixing this. Then I'll go down trying." She walked home through sleet, head uncovered, hair clinging to her face. Every step sounded like the clock ticking toward disciplinary review. When she reached her townhouse, she tore the framed oath off the wall and set it against the couch. For the first time in years, she prayed not for salvation, but for clarity. That weekend, Chen called Marcus. The DA's filing, but it could stall. I've seen cases like this get buried. I'm not letting it die. There's still public sympathy for the Whitmores. Don't expect a parade. I don't need a parade. You still have nowhere to live soon, right? Evictions tomorrow. Chen exhaled. I'll see what I can do. Maybe get someone at social services to fast-track housing assistance. It wasn't a promise, and Marcus knew better than to treat it like one. Still, when a government van showed up the next morning with a voucher for temporary housing, he felt something close to hope. He spent the first night there staring at the ceiling of a one-room unit that smelled like bleach and sadness. Then he took out paper and started the first letter. Dear Emma, dear Caleb, I don't know what you're being told, so I'll just tell you what's true. I love you. I'm still your dad. I'm working to make our home ready for when you come back. It might take time, but I'll be here. Love, Dad. He wrote that last line slowly, pressing the pen until it almost tore the paper. A month passed. The newspaper ran newer stories, and the old scandal slid to page 6. Robert's lawyer delayed and delayed. The DA's office grew cautious about retrials and political backlash. Chen's updates got shorter. Marcus spent his days cleaning buses for minimum wage through a temp contract and nights sketching plans for a better argument in family court. The letters to his kids piled up. None were ever answered. At the Whitmores', the picture started cracking deeper. Emma wet the bed twice, something she hadn't done since she was 5. Caleb stopped eating his favorite cereal and asked to go to bed early every night. Diane called the court therapist for advice and got told the reaction was normal adjustment anxiety. Robert, out on house arrest pending trial, tried to talk to Emma at breakfast. We'll get through this, sweetheart. She looked up at him and asked, Did you make Dad go away? He didn't answer. Her eyes filled anyway. Then you did. Pierce's investigation hearings moved forward in quiet halls, away from cameras. She kept showing up in the mornings, handing over pieces of her career like receipts. The panel chair asked, Judge, if the reversal is granted, your record will show negligence and conflict of interest. Are you prepared for that? She said, yes. Why? Because maybe once the right people win, the record will mean less. Late one night, she left the courthouse and drove again to that same rundown area. Marcus was sitting on the curb outside his building, still in work clothes, holding an envelope of returned letters marked Undeliverable Placement Confidential. When he looked up, he saw her headlights cut through the dark and said flatly, This another chance? It's a briefing, she said. The rehearing's scheduled for next month. He laughed under his breath. Next month. They'll be different by then. I won't even recognize their voices. They won't forget you. You don't know kids like mine. They learn quick how to survive disappointment. She wanted to tell him she believed him, that survival itself was proof of his parenting. But she didn't. Instead, she said, We'll need testimony about the night on the road, so I can relive it for paperwork, so people can see who you are. He looked up. And what are you? Someone who finally believes in second chances. He shook his head. You believed in those before the gavel fell too, remember? She left with wet eyes she didn't bother hiding. When the day of the rehearing came, nothing felt resolved. Reporters waited again, this time not for scandal but for spectacle. Inside, the air pulsed like before a storm. Marcus stood at one table, Diane at another. Robert wasn't allowed in, appearing by video from county jail. Chen sat behind Marcus, jaw tight. Pierce walked in no longer a judge but as a witness. The court stenographer adjusted her mic. State your name and former position. Caroline Pierce, County Family Court Judge. Retired pending review. Describe the events leading to the previous ruling. I ruled to transfer custody based on evidence that was later shown to be influenced by the petitioners through unlawful interference. Was that a mistake? It was more than a mistake. It was a failure of duty. The lawyer for the Whitmores interrupted. Are you here to purge guilt, Miss Pierce? I'm here because truth shouldn't depend on who can afford the better story. The judge presiding now said, Mr. Holt, do you have anything to add? Marcus stepped to the microphone. His hands trembled. I've lost every fight I ever had with this system. I probably deserve some of that, but my kids don't. I'm not perfect. I just want the chance to be the one who tucks them in again. That's it. Silence stretched. The judge announced that deliberations would take several weeks. Another delay. Another cliff nobody could see the bottom of. Outside the courthouse, Marcus and Pierce met by accident on the steps. That's it? He asked. For now, she said. They always take their time when you're the one waiting. He smiled weakly. Real justice sure loves being late. She nodded. But sometimes it still shows up. He turned to leave and she called after him. Marcus. He looked back. When you covered them with your jacket that first morning, what were you thinking? That they deserved warmth, he said, even if it was borrowed. Pierce looked down. Me too. They didn't know it yet, but that borrowed warmth was about to become something bigger, the last fragile link holding the story together before the next wave of loss hit. Because in real life, nothing ends clean, and mercy never comes free. The ruling came on a Thursday morning when the city smelled like rain and diesel. Marcus was wiping bus windows when his phone buzzed. The number was blocked, the voice mechanical. Mr. Holt, this is a court notification. A decision in case number 7234 PSI has been entered. You may pick up certified copies after 2 p.m. He stood frozen, so long that his supervisor yelled twice before he moved. He clocked out early, took 2 subways across town, watched the courthouse clock tick past noon. By the time his number was called at the clerk's window, his stomach felt hollow. The woman slid the envelope through the slot. He tore it open in the lobby, lips moving silently as he read, Asterisk. Custody determination reversed. Physical custody awarded to father. Review in 6 months. Asterisk. He sat on the bench outside the courthouse, paper shaking in his hands. The first thing he did was breathe. The second thing he did was call Chen. They ruled your way, Chen said when he answered. It's official. Diane agreed to release. You'll need to sign a transition plan tomorrow. Marcus nodded, even though Chen couldn't see it. They're coming home, he whispered. He'd imagined saying those words 1,000 times. None of the fantasies had included how terrifying they sounded out loud. The next day, Diane brought the children to the county office. There were no reporters this time. Chen stood by a window pretending not to listen. When Emma saw Marcus, she froze. Caleb ran first, colliding into his legs. Emma held back, torn between joy and fear. Marcus knelt, waiting. When she finally moved, it was slow, one step, then another, then a sob that emptied her chest. You kept saying you'd come, she cried. He held them both like something breakable. Diane spoke softly behind them. They'll still visit me. He nodded. They need that. She handed him a small box. Inside were the letters he'd written, the ones marked undeliverable. I kept them. I read them out loud sometimes. He didn't trust himself to speak. He only said, Thank you. Life didn't become easy. The apartment felt smaller with the noise of children, and both joy and fear filling it again. Emma clung to routine, counting everything socks, minutes, until bedtime. Caleb refused to sleep alone, curling against Marcus's chest at night. Bills stacked just as fast as before. The heater broke again, and he learned to fix it with wire he stripped from an old extension cord. Pierce saw it all from a distance. She was out of the courts now, working in a tiny office above a laundromat, helping people file appeals they couldn't afford. Once or twice a week, Chen stopped by to hand her lunches in brown paper bags. You don't sleep, do you? He asked. Not much, she said. Why keep doing this? Because the work doesn't change if I quit. It only gets heavier for whoever's next. That winter, snow came early. Marcus picked up an extra shift clearing buses after hours, bringing Emma and Caleb hot chocolate from the vending machine when he came home. On Christmas Eve, he found them asleep under the tree they had built from cardboard and tinsel from the donation bin. For a moment, he thought of waking them, then remembered something Pierce had said once about mercy looking smaller than you expect. He tucked the blanket over them and whispered a quiet thank you to no one in particular. Months passed. Reviews came and went. Each one went better than expected. Emma's teacher sent notes about improvement. Caleb learned to read his first book, and the landlord finally agreed to sell Marcus the unit through a renter's program Chen had pushed through the system. Spring brought the smell of mud and thawing earth. They saved every spare dollar for one trip, just one. The ocean. It took 3 bus rides, a borrowed car, and a night in a budget lodge with thin towels. But they made it. The sky was gray when they reached the shore. The tide moved slow and heavy. Emma squealed at the foam around her ankles. Caleb chased the waves, falling and laughing every time. Marcus stood watching them, the cold biting his feet through rolled-up jeans. He hadn't told them the truth about how close they had all come to never seeing this. But they would know one day. For now, he only said, "See, Em? Marine biology up close." They stayed until sundown. On the drive back, Emma fell asleep with her head against his arm. Caleb dreamed in the back seat about seashells. Traffic lights flashed red and gold across their faces. In another car farther up the coast road, Caroline Pierce sat parked by the dunes. She had come to breathe salt air and maybe forgive herself a little. She saw the same beat-up sedan pass by, recognized the family for half a second, then looked out to the water instead of following. She smiled, a quiet one meant for herself. Later that night, Marcus laid the children in their beds and turned off the light. The apartment hummed with the sound of ancient plumbing. He sat at the table, opened a notebook, and wrote a final letter. Asterisk. Dear Emma, dear Caleb, when you're older, you'll ask what it means to win. I'll tell you it's not trophies or courts. It's still being here when you almost weren't. If you remember me for anything, remember that. Asterisk. He tore the page free and slid it into the same box as the returned letters. He locked it in the closet, proof to himself that he had survived his own story. Outside, rain started again, tapping the glass in slow rhythm. He closed his eyes and let the sound fill the room. There was no music, no applause, no perfect ending. Just 3 people breathing under the same roof again, keeping the light on against the dark, and calling that enough. If you stayed with Marcus all the way here, thank you for watching and feeling this one through. Let me know where you're listening from and what moment sat with you the longest. Was it when he lost everything? Or when he finally got that last letter written? Drop it in the comments, hit the like button if you want more true-to-life stories like this, and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next one.